Welcome to rePROs Fight Back, a podcast where we explore all things reproductive health, rights, and justice. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and I'll be helping you stay informed around issues like birth control, abortion, sex education, and LGBTQ issues, and much, much more. Giving you the tools you need to take action and fight back. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, rePROs. How's everybody doing? I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and my pronouns are she, her. So y'all, I hope you enjoyed last week's episode talking with abortion storytellers. I'm so excited that we're going to be doing it again this week. And like our last episode, I really just want to focus on the storytellers and not do a big introduction like we normally do. But there are a couple things we do need to talk about before we turn to the storytellers. And it's only because they're timely. So if you're listening to this when it comes out, next week, the Senate is going to be voting on the Women's Health Protection Act. It's a federal bill that would protect the right to access abortion against restrictions and bans in the states. And it would ensure that people everywhere have the ability to access basic healthcare, right? Access abortion wherever they live. If you want to learn more about WIPA and why it would be magical to pass WIPA, we did an episode last year talking to Jackie Blank at the Center for Reproductive Rights, talking about why passing the Women's Health Protection Act would be magical. So we'll make sure to link to that in our show notes so you can go back and listen to it. If you have time between now and February 28th, please call your senators and tell them that you want them to support the Women's Health Protection Act. And then the other timely thing is the next day is important because, well, one, it's my birthday, which is not the real important reason, but two, it will mark 6 months since Texas's SB 8 has gone into effect. So that means for 6 months, people in Texas have not been able to access their constitutional right to abortion. And so how I'm going to celebrate my birthday is by donating to Texas abortion funds. So if you are able, this is just a great reminder that people in Texas are still really struggling to access care. And if you can, please donate to Texas abortion funds. So with that, let's turn to really the important part of this episode, which is the storytellers. I am just so grateful to all of them for taking time to share their stories with us. I had a wonderful time speaking to all of them. And I just want to give a huge thank you to We Testify and Renee Bracey Sherman for connecting me with all of their abortion storytellers who participated in these 2 episodes. So thank you to everybody. I really appreciate it. So with that, let's turn to the wonderful storytellers. Hi, Kelsey. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm happy to be here.
So before we get started, do you want to take a quick second and introduce yourself and include pronouns?
Yeah. So my name's Kelsea McLain. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. I'm an abortion storyteller with We Testify. And in my day job, I work with the Yellow Hammer Fund, which is an abortion fund based out of Alabama. I work remotely, but do a lot of work supporting abortion access in the South.
Yeah, they're really great. I mean, so they're both really great. We Testify and Yellowhammer. So that is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I am so excited to have you here today to tell your abortion story. So let's get started and just go with however you feel most comfortable telling it. So can you tell us your story?
Yeah. So my abortion story is really like a decade of a story. I have had 3 abortions, and abortion is, featured really prominently in my reproductive journey. And when I talk about my abortions, I really like to talk about the situation I was in and the state of mind I was in during each abortion, because I think that really shaped the experiences. And a thing that really played in heavily to my abortion experiences was abortion stigma. And I feel like I have a lot to say about stigma and how it can really harm, not just emotionally, but physically harm people when they're trying to access this care. So I always try to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that's so important. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. My first abortion happened, I guess. It's like I'm so bad at dates and times. And I know for some people that's very prominent and important, but it's never been very important to me. But I guess about 10 years ago, because it was right after I graduated college, and I graduated college in 2008. So about 10 or 11 years ago, and I was fresh out of college. I had entered into that awful job market of the, like that time period where literally no one could get a job. We were like kind of like that first wave of people that have been promised all these things with our expensive college educations. And here I
Yes, when I left grad school.
yeah. So I was here with bucket loads of student loan debt and no one willing to give me a job. I was either overqualified or underqualified. Magical, hellacious place to be. My partner and I were long distance at the time. We are now married, and we were college sweethearts. I had actually, well, not really college sweethearts. We were college bar buddies who got together after we graduated college and realized that we kind of missed each other. I had relocated out of state though. So we were long distance. I was living in Florida. He was living back home in Texas. And I had returned, I had just lost my job. Actually, I was fired and I was waiting tables. And so I decided to go visit him for a week. I came home and I started feeling sick a few weeks later. And I was on the verge of losing my apartment. I was on unemployment because I had really lost my job unjustly. So I qualified for unemployment and I was surviving on that incredibly limited income. I think it was like $400 a month or maybe $800 a month, but I know it was barely enough to cover my rent. And then I had to pay all my other bills on it too. So paying rent was no longer an option. Actually, as I was going through, I did a medication abortion for my first abortion. Actually, all three of my abortions were medication. But I remember I was going through the process of miscarriage as I was like boxing up things in my apartment and moving them out. Thankfully, I, had the privilege of having a soft place to land. I wasn't going to have to be living out of my car or hotels or trying to find, some other housing situation for myself. I was able to move in with my mom. It was a really rough situation to be in. And now at this point in my life, no, I don't want to have kids. But I say that first abortion was really, truly motivated by my financial situation. I wasn't in a kind of financial situation where I could even sit with that pregnancy and figure out if children was something I wanted in my life or something I wanted with my partner at the time. I just knew that there was no way I could afford a child, that having a baby would mean I would be completely dependent on my family when I was already dependent on my family. And I didn't want to be. I wanted to be independent and paying my own bills and living in my own place. And it was also going to really screw up my partner's life. He was finishing up paramedic school. He was really dependent on being able to have this long distance relationship and not have anything forcing him to relocate or move any sooner than he was ready to. And it would have been probably detrimental to our relationship. I don't think I would be married to this man now if we had children together during that stressful time in our lives. But it was my whole work and life's work was really transformed by that abortion. First, there weren't a lot of protesters at the clinic, but there was one. And I just remember it pissed me off. It incensed me and filled me with rage that this old man with a sign could just be standing out there wasting his time when there was, shit that needed to be done in the city, concerned about me and my life and my choices when he knew nothing about me. And as I sat in the clinic and made eye contact with the other patients in that facility, I got mad for them because I knew I was confident in my choices. I thankfully did not have the burden of like a faith that made me feel bad about myself or a family that wouldn't support me. And I was there with my mom. She was holding my hand and there were people sitting in that waiting room alone. And they had to come and face that ugly man outside by themselves. And that really bummed me out. And then just affording the abortion was such a burden. I absolutely struggled to get the funds together. I had to have my boyfriend send me money instead of coming to be with me, which is really what I emotionally needed in that moment, was my partner actually being there. And we had to scrimp and save. I had to use the last little bit of money or space I had on my credit card. And ultimately, an abortion fund stepped in to help me cover the rest of the balance. I probably had to delay my care 2 to 3 weeks because of the lack of funds. And it was really torturous to be pregnant that entire time when I didn't want to be. And when I knew that this pregnancy was not going to continue. It just felt like torture. That's the best way to describe it. I had lots of really stern conversations with my body where I just was trying to will it to miscarry, while I was trying to will something to happen. I felt like my body was betraying me in a way. I just didn't feel like myself. But thankfully, with the help of the abortion fund, my partner sending me that money, I was able to get the medication and do the medication abortion. And it was a pretty big non-event. It was painful. It sucked. I went through all the side effects. That was no fun. But also I was pregnant. I knew that there's no way to get out of pregnancy without there being a little bit of pain and discomfort. That's just the virtue of having a uterus, right? And it was fine. I felt fine afterwards. I didn't have these regrets. I didn't have these dreams where I was plagued by a baby asking me why I'd gotten rid of it. All the things that, I had seen, I was active on Twitter and talked a little bit about abortion on Twitter, and the things that people would say to me on Twitter just for being pro-choice and, say that happened to their friend or that girl that they knew that had an abortion and then regretted it. None of that happened to me. I was very content with my decision. After that, I ended up reaching out to my clinic, asking them if they had any jobs or needed volunteers. They diverted me to a clinic down the road. It was actually such a privilege and a unique thing in the South. My city not only had one abortion clinic, it had three. And for some reason, they were all on the same row. I called it abortion row in my head. It just really cracked me up. But yeah, just a block away, there was another facility that ultimately I kind of wish I would have visited. They had like a more like cozy, warm, inviting. My doctor's office was very clinical. And this place, they really practice like
Mhm.
abortion care where it's like soft colors and, all female staff that really cares about you and, checks in with you and stuff. But, I was thrilled to find them. I started volunteering with them and clinic escorting. I'd never done it before. I just kind of was like, let me just figure this out and see what this is about. They had protesters there. And then ultimately they gave me a job and I relocated here to North Carolina to work for one of their sister facilities in Raleigh. And my partner eventually moved here. We moved in together. We started our lives together with a dog and my cat from college, and things were really great and sweet. And then I joined We Testify and got involved with abortion funds and was just doing all this really cool work. And I was actually coming home from my first We Testify retreat, met all the other storytellers in our cohort. And I, had been drinking kind of heavily. That's, what we were doing at the retreat. The people who like to imbibe, we were sitting around a campfire after a day of really heavy processing and abortion storytelling and work and, having some drinks. And I just assumed I had maybe imbibed too much. I'm not a big drinker to begin with, and I get hungover real easy. But I remember on our trip, we were in Northern California, and to get from the retreat center to the airport, we had to go down this twisty road. And I was sick. I was just sick. I was like, I know I normally have motion sickness, but there's something extra going on here. I was sick the entire plane flight. I got home. And then a few days later, I just looked at my husband. Oh, and we were recently engaged. That's the other thing. I always say it was that engagement sex was a little too powerful because it was definitely the night of the engagement that I got pregnant. Just looking at the timing, and it was such a bizarre and surreal, different experience because I didn't have any of the like stigma, shame, and anxiety that I had the first time. I'd been through this already. I now worked in the movement. I had, sat with hundreds of people having abortions and held their hands. I was so intimately aware of abortion and what it means for people. And now at this point in my life, my husband and I really had solid conversations and we decided we were child free. Neither of us wanted to have kids. So I just remember I got home and I said, I think I might be pregnant. I think I need to take a pregnancy test. And he was like, oh shit. And I said, yeah, but it's cool. We're going to do the same thing we did before. And if that's the case, and I brought a pregnancy test home from work, peed on it in the bathroom and just shouted to him. He was upstairs on his computer. Hey, I think I'm pregnant again. I have to have another abortion. And he was like, okay, do you need anything? And I was like, no, I'm actually good. It was simple. I just went through my employer. I called my boss and was like, "Hey, how do I get an abortion from you?" And so it was no big deal. But one thing that really always sticks with me is that I was now in this job. I was salaried. I had health insurance. I had benefits. I worked for an abortion clinic. My health insurance wouldn't cover my abortion.
Wild.
Yeah. So, and that's a conversation I've had in the state with other people that work for reproductive rights orgs is it's a frustration for us that we exist in this climate and world where we can actually work providing access to the care, but we can't even give like our own employees and our coworkers the same access that we envision everyone deserves. Right. So just, a moment where, all of my abortion experiences really kind of highlight just all of the barriers and burdens that people, even with a lot of privilege, have to go through to access this care. But it was no big deal. I got the medications. I was very early in the pregnancy because I was on it and I didn't have to like wait and struggle and fundraise. I was in a position where I could afford my care. I do remember being pretty frustrated that I had to do the 72-hour wait period that the state mandates. Working for an abortion care provider, I sat in the same room as the nurse when she would do the state mandated counseling on the phone with all of our patients to start that 72-hour clock. And I could recite that counseling verbatim. But despite that, me working in abortion care and, I know more than anybody about this, I still by the state was required to wait 3 days after completing that first superficial step to access my care. And I just remember just waiting those 3 days and being just like angrier and angrier and angrier and knowing like I already knew this. I knew I was prepared for this and I'm early. Like it's no big deal to wait. I'm not someone who's 19 weeks and facing a 20-week cutoff in my state. And I called the clinic at 19 weeks and 6 days and they're like, well, you got to wait 3 days. So I knew it wasn't that bad for me, but it was still just so insulting. So, like the government was just hand holding. I think during that time period, and unnecessary,
Just
right?
unnecessary.
I feel like I called and left some voicemails with a few of the Republicans in the General Assembly and was like, hey, just so you know, I'm having an abortion and you wanted to know about it and forced me to wait 3 days. So now you have a voicemail on your phone about it. Didn't change anything, made me feel better. And one cool thing about that experience, though, was I now had this family of people who had had abortions, who knew how to support people having abortions. And I got to just toy with this idea of having this like radical acceptance experience. Like it wasn't just like the people you normally expect to have your back, your family. It was like all these friends, people I hadn't even known that long, and had a Facebook group. I posted in it, this is weird. I don't know how to start this, but hey, I'm having an abortion. And, I just wanted to let my friends know. And in a few days after I posted that, I got this beautiful care package in the mail from We Testify. Someone who I was very close with was also in We Testify. And she let them know like all my favorite things. So it was filled with all my favorite things. And it just, I remember that was the thing that made me cry the hardest through the whole abortion.
It's going to make me cry just like hearing like the difference of just like how supported you were and how everybody should be so supported.
Well, and, like to really send that point home and I'm probably just gonna start crying, but it's fine. Crying is fine. I'm in therapy now and they're like, yeah, crying's fine.
Yeah.
But the abortion didn't hurt. It was so simple and so easy, to the point that I was worried it didn't work. And it worked just fine. I was no longer pregnant. And so I just had this reality of, yeah, probably there were things different about that first pregnancy. It was further along, yeah, of course you have more tissue to pass. Things are bigger. It's going to be more painful. But is the pain, like I know that emotional pain can be physical. And I know that when, my father passed when I was 17 and I remember the physical pain, the manifestations of like, I developed this all over rash on my body in the wake of it, my grief and my stress. And I know that all manifests in the physical. And just knowing that like people are going through unnecessary pain potentially because they feel shame, because they don't have support, it's heartbreaking. Like no one should have to physically feel pain, and we do. It's just the nature of being alive. But anything we can do to make it better. And pain is the thing that people fear the most with the abortion procedure. When I was working in the clinic and counseling people, that was always just their biggest anxiety and fear is how bad it would hurt. And a lot of times I'd hear this like the tone, and I get it because I felt like that with my first abortion, is that it's going to hurt really bad because I deserve for it to hurt really bad because I'm making a bad choice. And it's just heartbreaking because I now know what it can be like to have an abortion when you don't have to deal with that burden and that shame. So that's something I'm real big on is I want everyone to have the dream abortion, which is, my second abortion, where you are just able to access that care and have a community of love that surrounds you and have a partner that supports you and not have to stress about how you're even going to get the abortion. It just happens. It just, when you're ready for it to happen, it happens. So that was that. Had my abortion. My husband and I enjoyed a nice little engagement and we got married in 2016. Then right before the pandemic started, I guess this was February of, or maybe not right before the pandemic. I guess it wasn't right before the pandemic. Everything's just blurred together. But in February of 2019, my birth control did not work again. This third time was really kind of devastating. I'd processed through the abortion stigma, but I had never confronted the idea of multiple abortion stigma. And like 2 abortions, hey, happens, but 3 abortions, now I was filled with this like, I know it's like it's no different. Like it's no different. I know I don't want to have kids, like, but it feels different.
Right.
It feels like I should be harder on myself. I feel like I let myself down. I don't know why I can't get over this hurdle of like,
Well, and like that shame spiral, then you get in and
right.
it just like keeps going in
And I
your head.
remember I did have this brief moment with my second abortion, and I was no longer working for the abortion care provider. I was now working at Yellowhammer Fund, who also just graciously was like, if you have to pay for your abortion, we got it. Like, we believe no one should have to pay for an abortion. That includes our employees. And Yellowhammer Fund is not able to offer me coverage for abortion in my healthcare plan because, yet again, even though it's private insurance, there's all these barriers. But it was a lot. And I remember after my second abortion, my old boss at the clinic, she made this little kind of sly comment to me, like, well, don't let the staff know you're doing this. Like, and I don't know what it was about, but it just made me feel a little bit like she kind of had an idea that, I was being a little bit reckless with using abortion, like having too many abortions. And if the staff finds out that you can just easily have an abortion, then everybody's going to do it, which is absurd. No one's going to get pregnant just because abortion is easy to access. Right. But I think that stuck with me a little bit. I think that having someone in the movement that, I trusted and used to work for, showing me a little bit of shame and stigma for 2 abortions, I was like, oh, what are people going to think about 3? Like, fuck. Yeah.
And somehow that
I'll
just like
tell you,
hurts worse.
some of the worst stigma I've gotten has been friendly fire.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that really struggle, like they want to be pro-choice because they know people deserve access to abortion, and deep down they know if something terrible ever happens to them, they want to be able to access the care without stigma, without shame, without barriers. But they also just can't let go of their bullshit that like we should, like every pregnancy should be planned, and unplanned pregnancy is inherently the evil, bad, irresponsible thing. And I think that's like really at the root of it. Cause like, how do we treat, women that have, bring
Yeah.
children into the world that were unplanned? How do we treat women with lots of children? There's all of this like shame and stigma and bullshit that people have to face surrounding reproduction and children. And then I went through the abortion process, and it was not only emotionally difficult, just processing through that like multiple abortion stigma. It was actually a really physically difficult abortion because I was just so not wanting, I work in this movement. I know all of the doctors. I know all of the people that work in all the clinics locally. I wanted privacy. So I decided to self-manage. And I I say that was a position of privilege, to choose to self-manage because I had the choice. I could have gone to a clinic and just swallowed my feelings, but I wanted to do the
Mm-hmm.
thing that would make me feel most comfortable and safe and like I had the most privacy. And I'm not someone who can have a lot of privacy when they're having an abortion because everybody knows who I am. And I recognize that we're rapidly approaching a reality where it's not going to be a privilege to self-manage. It's going to be what people are forced to do. So it was such a complicated world to exist in, and this weird spot where everything kind of came together. And I realized why self-managing really makes a lot of sense and why it needs to be one of those expanded options that everybody has access to, even in a world where abortion is legal and you can go to a clinic. Because just for some people, going to a clinic doesn't work out time wise or emotional wise, or, maybe they're prominent, well known in their community, and they're worried about being spotted. I mean, there's all these things. And self-managing, I used misoprostol only. I wasn't able to get my hands on the full regimen, and it didn't work. And it's really painful and just sucks to go through the sickness you get with misoprostol, the side effects of using it over and over and over again. And when you're using misoprostol only, you have to take high doses of it. So it wasn't working for me. I eventually just swallowed my pride. I went to the clinic. I was like, do you think I should do a surgical? Do you think I should try like the pill, but like legit this time. And the nurse who I'm friends with was like, just do the pill again. I really think it's just that Mifeprex, like your body likes that. Your body, like this is how we end a pregnancy is with this medicine and not with this other one. So I did the medication abortion. It worked fine. It was a lot more painful than the first one, but I also recognized like I'd put my body through a lot. I emotionally had gone through a lot. Having an abortion and it not working is just devastating.
Yeah.
And I just really was like anxious about having to do that surgical procedure and like have a doctor who I've hugged and high fived and worked in the movement like in between my legs. It just was like a very panicky feeling. I didn't like it. So I am really thankful that I wasn't forced to do the surgical procedure and that I still had the privilege of choice and options. But that last abortion was like, it was rough. But it did lead to a wonderful transformation in our reproductive lives, and my husband not wanting to put me through any further hell and feeling already bad that I'd had these two unplanned pregnancies that he was directly responsible for. He got a vasectomy, and now we are the vasectomy advocates in our young and child-free community of friends. He's always talking the big talk. Talking to a friend who's had multiple children and she's done having kids, her husband too. So it's just we're still on this reproductive journey. I think ours is over and we're really thankful for that. And I took a while for me to just publicly say I've had 3 abortions, but now it's like I've really leaned into it. I talked with my friend who has multiple children. She just had her 4th baby. And she's like, well, hell, I've been pregnant more times than you have. So like, who's the irresponsible one? And I was like, that's a great point. Like, that's like a really great point. I never considered like, just because your kids are here and I do not have children, it doesn't mean one of us, you've been pregnant way more than me, like you've definitely been pregnant way more than me. So pregnancy just happens to people. And there's ways to prevent it. There's ways to control it. There's way to space them out. But sometimes there's not. Sometimes nature has a way, man. Our bodies, and to back up, I guess it's just, I really hate that the advice and care that we can give to others is so different than the advice and care that we can give to ourselves.
Oh God,
I remember
yes.
sitting with women and they'd be feeling bad about like their 4th or 5th abortion. And me with no judgment or care in their world would just be holding their hand and be like, you know what? All your body wants to do is make more of you. That's all your body wants to do. And your body doesn't care what your brain wants. So don't feel bad about biology getting in the way of your like life dreams, right? Like biology does biology. It just goes. It gets us sick when it wants to get us sick. It, takes us out when it wants to take us out, and it creates new life when it wants to create new life. And you can't live your life just because your body decided it wanted something different for you than what your brain wanted. And then not to just apply that to myself, it's hard, but it's real.
Oh, I feel you so hard on that. It's like so many things like you would never put up with a friend saying about themselves or saying, and you're like, but in your own head, it's like, yeah, you don't listen
Right.
to what you just said to them.
So those are, really, and then, long and run my abortion stories. With my 3rd abortion, I also had a little abortion party. It's something I'd always joked with my friends I wanted to do. And here was my opportunity. So my best girlfriends came over. We watched movies. They brought me, each friend brought me a little care gift. I got socks and face masks and had my heating pad plugged in. And we just like plugged along and had a good time. Sent the husband upstairs, made him, living room was girl zone. So it was a nice little moment. And I know that there's been like some people that have talked about abortion parties, or there were, I always forget her name. Oh, a recording artist that actually, I can't remember her name. But she did a song and it was called Letter or Voicemail for Jill. And it's about a friend who calls her, and it always makes me cry thinking about this song because it's just, everybody deserves this. But, she's just leaving this voicemail for a friend who's about to have an abortion, and, about how so often for our reproductive experiences, people celebrate us, but abortion is not one of those things. And that she was promising her friend that, when she gets back home, she's going to throw her an abortion shower because people deserve to be showered with love when they go through a reproductive experience. And I fully agree with that. And that always like just sticks with me that, we don't get to be celebrated for going through these experiences. And I'm sure there will be people listening to this that'll just be appalled at the idea of celebrating someone for having an abortion. But it's like it's just one of those decisions that you make that, it's a permanent decision. It's a big deal. Or maybe it isn't a big deal, but just making that decision is a big deal. And we celebrate people when they go through these big life experiences and when they make big, important decisions for themselves. And there just needs to be more of that. There needs to be more of celebrating abortion. I see the way that abortion has liberated my life. I see, how hard my friends who are parents' lives are, and that they've made very deliberate just choices to bring children into the world and be parents. And I just, I hate that it's just considered against like your nature or against what's right to be a person that decides maybe that's not for me. And maybe I'm not wanting to take that on in my life. And yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling, but
No, it's all been perfect. No, it's all been great. Thank you so much for sharing it. I really loved that you took some time to talk about stigma, because I think that is such a huge issue around abortion. And no, it was wonderful. So again, thank you so much for sharing.
Of course, happy to. And thank you for doing this podcast.
Hi, Jack. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I am so happy that you are here today to share your abortion story. Would you like to introduce yourself and share your story?
Yes. My name is Qu'emi. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a non-binary person living out on the West Coast in LA, but my abortion happened like a decade ago, between 1920. It was a nice little birthday gift for me. Basically, what happened was I'm like a freshman in college, had a part-time job, I'm full-time in school. I had a partner, the same partner since I was about 16, my high school sweetheart. And in typical fashion, when you're a sexually active 19-year-old, you use condoms, but then sometimes they break. And then you're aware of Plan B and you go ahead and you grab that, but then it doesn't work for whatever reason. I'm still not sure. Maybe I'm just really fertile. That's just a privilege of mine. I'm just so super fertile.
These things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there wasn't anything obvious that would make me think that like give me a reason as to why Plan B didn't have any effect for me, but it didn't. So over that month, my birthday happens and I realize I still haven't had a period, which, I mean, we like not having a period, but not for that reason. And I remember I go to the pharmacy and I pick up, it's like a 3-pack of pregnancy tests. And so you're supposed to pee on it and then wait, what is like a minute, 2 minutes or something like that before you look at the result. And the directions are very clear about, wait the full 2 minutes, don't get crazy, don't try to see things where there aren't things. But I swear that my body just got near it, and like the moment that it felt my body heat, that damn thing was like, you're pregnant, to the point where I thought that it was broken. I remember my friend, we're still friends now, actually. We're going to be roommates in a couple of weeks. And my friend during undergrad, I was like, hey, listen, there's a third one. I'm convinced this thing is friggin' broken. Can you pee on this? Because that friend hadn't been with anybody who produced sperm in like years. So I'm like, okay, this will be definitive proof. And theirs was negative. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just so fertile and so put together that just my body being near this means I'm pregnant. So I called a Planned Parenthood. The partner I had at the time, I mean, we're both like 19 at this point, 19, 20 at this point, and we're both absolutely just emotionally unintelligent little beings. It's a concept at that age. And our relationship was very hot and cold and up and down, as things sometimes are when you're growing up. And I reach out to that partner and I tell them like, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. We call Planned Parenthood together and I don't have a car. So this dude's got to take me, but we're not getting along so well. So that's an awkward drive in itself. I take the first appointment. I can't, like, first thing in the morning. I think it was like 8 in the morning, super early, because the sooner the better. He drives me, he takes me. I'm going to the Planned Parenthood for the first time. I remember this was in Orlando, Florida, mind you. So this is like, there's 2 Planned Parenthood clinics, one, at least then, I don't know if there are more now. There's one on the east side, one on the west side, and only the west side one did abortions because the one on the east side was really close to campus. And that would be too convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone, or maybe there was like a political reason for that. Who knows? I know they opened one in Kissimmee because I was there for that opening later. So I go, there's like maybe 2 or 3 protesters outside, and their signs are very much directed towards, potential fathers saying, it's your baby too. But thankfully, my now ex, is just about as curmudgeon-y as me and does not give a rat's ass. Like, we're good. Let's go inside. And as soon as we get inside, I am no longer as nervous because I am greeted by the biggest smile from the friendliest receptionist I've ever met in my whole life. And I had visited clinics since and still have not had such a pleasant receptionist greet me. Made in Manhattan was playing on the TVs in the lobby. And as someone who is Puerto Rican, to see another Puerto Rican, it must have been a good sign, right? I'm a little woo-woo for that, but thanks, J-Lo. You guided me.
It's the little things sometimes, right? Like, just like the little thing you're like, this is clearly where I'm meant to be. Yes.
Yeah, I just really needed comfort and familiarity. And sometimes the funniest things, just like the most ridiculous things, will make a process easier for you. And in this particular scenario, I'm about to have an abortion and Made in Manhattan is on the TV. I'm like, hell yeah, we love a rom-com, because I was giving main character energy. And well, at the time, I also identified as a non-binary person who used they, them pronouns. And this was in 2011, I believe. There was a bit of a lack of cultural competency in a lot of these spaces. There still is now, but I also live in LA now. So when you fill out forms, there's a space for a preferred name. There's a space for pronouns. And that just wasn't the case in Florida in 2011, even at a Planned Parenthood. So that was not so fun to deal with. Everybody that was talking to me when I went back was very, very kind. But if I swear, having listened to yourself get misgendered over and over while you're just trying to access abortion care is the most. I'm already nervous. Now I'm pissed on top of it. And I'm not going to have the energy. I'm not going to do the emotional labor of having, a little info stash of, hey, this is what pronouns are. This is what my identity actually is. This is a teeny tiny bit more complicated for me than, the people helping me are probably aware of, but they don't know to ask those questions. But I'm not about to tell them because I'm 20 years old, terrified, right? And I remember when I got my abortion, again, impeccable timing on my part. Absolutely. Florida something had just gone into effect. A law had just gone into effect where you had to have a transvaginal ultrasound.
Oh.
So for those that don't know, that means instead of the traditional you see on Grey's Anatomy ultrasound from outside of your body, where they put the goo on your belly and they just check, they take a giant, a very unpleasant looking phallic object, put the jelly on that and put it inside you to make sure you're pregnant. Because me peeing onto sticks, having then identified as lesbian friend pee on a stick, and not having a period for a month and a half, that was not enough. Because clearly I'm unaware of the fact that I am pregnant, but whatever. Don't like that. They did ask, there was an option for folks that if they wanted to get a printout of the ultrasound and keep it, they absolutely could. And while I absolutely understand how that could be very cathartic for some folks, I am not one of those folks. And I said, fuck no, let's move on. Let's keep it rolling. That was weird enough. Didn't like that. In my particular case, I chose a medication abortion because I didn't want people face first in my crotch. The concept is weird to me. Unfortunately, the transvaginal ultrasound ended up getting like crotch action anyway, but whatever.
As little as you can. Let's do medication then.
I was trying so hard. Yeah, I was like, let me curate my experience here, right? There's one point where you can bring the person that you come in with you. There's like a little bit of a consult telling you how to use the medication, et cetera, et cetera. But my partner at the time passed out in the lobby. They just fell asleep. He just like slept through that whole thing. I'm like, party. I love my support system. It's going so well. So I get my medication. I end up having to quit my part-time job because I don't know if this is true for everyone. I've heard stories of other people having medication abortions, but I did not have a good time with that. It really was like an unpleasant experience for me. I took my medication. They give you anti-nausea medication as well because you're going to start cramping. They give you ibuprofen. They gave me a prescription for something stronger if I needed it. And I want to say within like 10 minutes of me taking, I had the kind where you put it in your mouth and it dissolves, as opposed to putting it in your vagina, which great, love that. But I immediately was nauseous. I immediately couldn't move. I immediately was like, I'm in bed. And I was bedridden for at least a week just because I was so uncomfortable. And I didn't really my appetite was severely just stunted. And I didn't really go back to normal for about 2 months because I was still spotting. After 2 weeks, I go back for it's just like a follow up just to make sure you're good. We have another transvaginal ultrasound, to make sure that all the bleeding did what it was supposed to do.
As much as you wanted one.
My vulva's debut. I know, it's just giving like my vagina's debut was very, fantastic. Everything's good. Everything's chill. I'm still not, like, I can't even eat, which is such a bummer because I'm a Taurus and my whole life revolves around when I'm going to eat and the experience of it. And then the partner I had at the time kind of just dipped right after that. We paid, I think, we split it. It was like $500. I miss my money every day. But the concept of having an abortion, besides the initial nervousness and fear, just because I still don't like medical settings. It's weird and gross and I don't want to get misgendered. I just kind of moved on from it, kind of put it in a box in the back of my head and didn't talk about it for about a year. I think, that one friend I had pee on a pregnancy test is who helped me. They knew. And I think one other person knew, but I just didn't talk about it. Eventually I get involved with, it was called Vox. It was Voices for Planned Parenthood. It was a student group on campus and there's an abortion speak out. And I chose to be a part of that. And just because, I don't know, I just kind of moved on. It was just something that I wasn't really I didn't want it to be a defining moment in my life. It was just something that was in the way of me getting to the other things that I wanted. Like I wanted to finish school and I wanted to, just not be pregnant, because pregnancy for me is very scary and dysphoric and it's like a big ick for me. And I knew then and I know now that I don't want children. And even actually tried to get sterilized, but they told me that they wouldn't sterilize me because I guess, when you consent to those things, that's when the government's like, oh, well, but you want it. They said that I hadn't had children yet and I was under the age of 30, so I could not access any kind of sterilization. But I'm turning 31 this year, so get ready, baby. It's happening. And guess what? My mind still has not changed. What's that like? So I did that first abortion speak out. It was chill. It was fine. I get a little bit involved with Planned Parenthood. It's one thing to be pro-choice, but then to actually need to access abortion. And you really become a lot more radicalized after that. And I'm like, I'm full pro-abortion at this point. I start going to Clip, and then I'm friends with Renee, my Beyonce Queen of Abortions, on Twitter, and she asked me to be a part of a digital abortion speak out that 1 in 3 was doing. And we've been inseparable since. When she started doing We Testify as a program through NNAF, she asked me to be part of her first cohort. And I was like, absolutely, yes, whatever you want, let's go. We go to a retreat and stuff, and it was amazing. And I have never been in such a supportive space. I was used to going to, reproductive justice moment or spaces and like abortion speak outs where they're very much talking about how they want to use your story as, a talking point for why we need abortion access, right? We need reproductive rights. But then they kind of dispose of you. They use your emotional labor. They don't compensate you. They expect you to figure out a way to get to and from those things. And there's no support after. And my face and my name are, that's very visible when I'm doing this abortion speak out because it's me talking about my abortion. And the amount of harassment that people like me trying to talk about their abortion story get, not just online, but also in person, is immense. And to not get support from some pretty big organizations after that is incredibly frustrating. So, of course, when I become a part of We Testify, I'm around a not white-centric space. during the first cohort, I was the first trans person, but since then, there have been more trans people. I now know other trans folks that have had access to or have had abortions that needed abortion access for varying reasons. I've met people that don't want children. I've met people that, had a child, had an abortion, had another child after that. And like, it's been such a wonderful and affirming space. And they make sure that you're taken care of, not just emotionally, but financially, which is something that me at 20 couldn't have imagined. So clearly Renee, not just Beyonce of abortions, but the Beyonce of my heart. And she hasn't been able to get rid of me since. she's stuck with me forever, and she will be stuck with me forever. And I'm happy to keep it that way.
Yeah, she does such a great job putting together such a diverse group of storytellers. Like, she arranged everybody for these 2 episodes, and it has been such a wonderful range of experiences that I have telling stories, and I'm so glad it's showing the reality of what abortion access looks like and who's accessing it, and just amazing. And I'm just so grateful that we're able to share all of y'all's stories so that people understand what abortion access in the America looks like.
Absolutely. Shout out to Renee. I don't think until joining We Testify that I really, my reasoning for having an abortion, whenever I did a speak out or I talked about it prior to joining We Testify, I think it was really difficult for people to kind of wrap their heads around the fact that my one reasoning for having one is because I just didn't want to be pregnant, and that was it. There really wasn't, a violin story or, whatever typical trauma-based conversations that were popular at the time or that were normally heard. I just didn't feel like being pregnant. I just don't want to be. And I think being in a space with Renee really made me feel like that was okay. That's an absolutely valid response. Sorry, it's not so juicy for reporters.
But... I mean, your reason is your reason, and it's nobody's business, but also it's completely valid.
It's like, pregnancy icky for me. No blunt. Thank you.
Right? And that's enough. When you start getting into the like, oh, well, this is a good abortion or a bad abortion. No. Like, unacceptable.
Like, don't you regret anything? I regret that it was so expensive. Right? Like $250 for a 20-year-old in college? Come on, folks. That is not okay. If anybody wishes to reimburse me for my abortion for 10 years ago, please submit. I do have Cash App, PayPal. Da-da-da.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, there are stories, everybody runs the gamut, right? So I'm sure there are people who have some other regrets, but like, everybody I've talked to is like, no, like the thing I look back on and like gave me problems was either like the shame or stigma I faced from various obstacles that either the state threw up or like having to deal with protesters or whatever. And like, those things are not okay either.
No, not at all. I completely agree.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. I love telling my funny little doodle story. Putzing around at 20, trying to figure out how to get an abortion.
Yeah. That was another great story we had, was like somebody who had to navigate judicial bypass. And I'm just like, the lengths people have to go to be able to access abortion care is unreal. Whether it's travel or navigating the judicial system or navigating the network of various restrictions that have been put in place. Like, this is basic health care. It should be so much easier to access, and everybody should be able to be supported.
Absolutely. And I had insurance at the time too, but I'm a military brat. TRICARE does not cover abortion. A concept. No one knows that. Get ready.
Yeah. Well, Jack, thank you.
Okay, so my name is Veronika. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas. And I've had 2 abortions. My first abortion, I had it when I was a minor, and there were like a whole bunch of issues that came along with that, because it wasn't just as simple as, going into the procedure and getting in. There's a law in Texas stating that, minors have to be above, or you have to be above 18 to have a abortion without parental consent, saying that minors need parental consent in order to get an abortion. So with the time that I found out that I was pregnant, I was about 17, I remember it like very vividly. I had just graduated from high school, and I had already been accepted into this new university, which is the one I'm at right now. And I found out I was pregnant like a couple weeks before I had to leave cities to go, to the city I am now. And I was like, I realized that I might have been pregnant. Like I kept like track of my period, and I was a very like regular person. So then I realized that I was like 10 days away from like pretty much a week late. So that kind of got me really scared. And so I just decided to, take a pregnancy test. And I was with my partner at the time when we were taking the test. And I just remember like seeing the pregnant on there. I just like started like crying like uncontrollably because I knew what would have to happen like if I did have a child. I knew one that my mom would be mad because my mom's very strict, and I also knew that like I was just about to start this like new journey, new chapter in my life, going to school, something I've been really wanting to do, and I wanted to go to be an engineer, and so I knew that that was going to be the first thing I had to give up because at the time I was like a teenager with no job, no money saved, and my partner was in the same boat. So, in that like couple minutes that I was crying, I decided that, I wanted an abortion. And it was just kind of this instinctual thought. And like, I remember thinking about it and like not even thinking of, well, how do I get an abortion? How do I do this, and this? And it was just like, okay, I need to have this abortion like this. I have no other option. So I remember at the time my partner was the one to like look up like how do you get an abortion, because I remember thinking at the time like is abortion even like legal? I didn't know, and I didn't know pretty much any information about that. So yeah, my partner was like looking up how to get an abortion, and the first like roadblock I guess was him finding out that you have to be over 18 to have an abortion without parental consent. And when I heard that, I was just like, wow, this is like, then I can't do it because I cannot tell my mom that I'm pregnant. And I cannot tell her that I need an abortion because I was just fearful of like, well, what if she gets really angry, and what if she is like, she kicks me out? And, there's so many things that could have happened if I told her. So, and then I knew I also couldn't tell my dad because my dad was really religious. And at this time he was living in a different state. And so it was just like, it wasn't an option. And so when we found out that we had to get parental consent, that's when we found Jane's due process. And then basically, Jane's due process helps minors specifically get abortions without parental consent through a process called the judicial bypass process. And so I didn't really hear all of this, like the background, like investigating. I just kind of was handed like the phone, and he was just like, here, like they have this like text line that you can text. And that was just so great because I knew I was like in no position to be like talking to somebody on the phone, like crying. So I was just like, crying, texting them, like scared, basically giving them all my information because I was just desperate. And so once I, texted the hotline, they gave me like a list of things that I needed to do. And it was just kind of things that needed to be done like as soon as possible to get this abortion done as soon as possible, especially because I was on a kind of a timeline because I was supposed to leave like 2-3 weeks like after, this whole thing happened. So the first item on the list was to go to the ultrasound, like go get an ultrasound. And I didn't really know what the point of getting the ultrasound was for at first. I think, they told me like to confirm your pregnancy, but at the same time, the judge needs to know, and like you need to be aware of like exactly how far along you are. Just so for like reasons like, okay, what kind of like abortion do you want to have? And luckily when I went, I was only like about 5-6 weeks. And so when I went to the ultrasound, then I finally got like in contact with my case manager. And also, by the way, they paid for the ultrasound, which is really great because I had literally no money at the time. And so it was just really nice, getting that $100 relief because I did not have that money. And so after, getting the ultrasound, that's when they connected me with my case manager. And basically, case manager is just a person that helps guide you through the process, making sure you get to your appointments and make sure you have transportation. And luckily, I had the support of like my partner's mom or my partner's parents. And so she was the one that like drove us around, and which is really helpful. And I remember at the time having to be like very like secretive and like, having to lie about like where I was going, say that I was like, going to eat, but in reality I was like getting my ultrasound. So after I got in contact with my case manager, she directed me, or she like set up an attorney for me. She like kind of got me in contact with an attorney because I needed to meet with my attorney kind of just to prepare what I would have to do when I go actually in front of the judge. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier. So judicial bypass, the way it works is that it's basically allowing you to get an abortion without having parental consent. And so the way that this works is that you have to go through like a lengthy process. You have to get the ultrasound, you have to get an attorney, and then finally you meet with a judge and basically beg them to give you an abortion, to let you have an abortion. And in reality, what they say is that they want to prove that you're mature and well informed about this decision, which, to me, it sounded like, oh, I mean, that makes sense. Like, minors are dumb. Like, everyone thought that, like, everyone thinks that minors are dumb. But looking back at it, I think that's definitely was like one of the most mature decisions I ever did. And that's really bullshit, is like not letting people have healthcare, especially minors. It's just really stupid. So yeah, going back to the story, I met with my attorney, and it was basically like to prep meeting the judge, because the judge is going to like purposefully ask you very like invasive questions, and like questions like, well, why were you having sex? Questions like, why can't you involve your parents? Questions like, well, why can't you just raise this baby? Like things like that you wouldn't normally talk about with a stranger. But in this case, it was different because you're begging him to let you have an abortion, have healthcare. And so, yeah, so when I went with my attorney, she basically told me like what kind of questions they would ask, and she prepped me for that, that thing that they'll ask you invasive questions on purpose. And the whole point is just to make you seem immature. And so she was saying that you need to be well prepared, knowing like how the abortion works. You need to know, you just need to sound like mature. And so especially she was telling me to like emphasize that I'm in school, or I'm going to go to school. I'm already accepted into like a big university. And it was kind of like a sort of big deal down there and where I was from, because there's really only like one university and like a community college. And so I made sure to remember to emphasize that I was like going to school because I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. And so, yeah, after meeting that attorney, it was really great because I felt prepared and I had like a list of possible questions they had. And so then the next step was to get to the courthouse. And when going to the courthouse, it was just a really scary experience because I don't think I've had ever been to like that courthouse or a courthouse before. And so having to go there, I felt I was doing something wrong because, you only go to a courthouse if you have like tickets or if you did something bad and you need to speak to a judge. And I was just really scared. And so just going there, it was just like I was just a wreck. Like I was completely terrified because I knew that I was going to meet with this judge face to face. And actually, when I first thought about like meeting the judge, I thought we were going to be in like a normal Judge Judy setting where it's like a big courtroom and like the judge at the very top of like their stand or whatever. But it was completely different because when we got into the like room, it was basically like a really small room, like smaller than a bedroom. And there were like couches and chairs, and it was really intimidating because like the judge was like right in front of me and he was just staring at me. And like, there were like two other people in there, like my attorney and then some other person. But yeah, so it had to be like very private. They couldn't know your name. They have to address you as Jane. There's like this whole thing. But it was just scary because like I didn't expect to be so close to this judge, like face to face, and like actually talking to him and explaining like this whole situation. And so that's when the questions started, like, well, why are you having sex? Like, why can't you involve your parents? And like explain the same thing, like, my mom's strict, my dad doesn't live in the state, he's religious. And then he was asking me questions like just making me feel dumb and immature, and like making me feel that that it was my fault, that I was irresponsible and immature. And that's just how it basically went. I just remember being like terrified the entire time and trying to like look strong and trying to like get him to approve this bypass. So basically after all the questions were done, at the end he decided to like make a little personal comment that kind of like got me scared. It got me thinking that he wasn't going to approve my bypass. But in the end, finally I got out. I was just, ready to get out of that room. And later on I found out that I got the bypass approved, which I was just so relieved and thankful for, because like I knew that if you get denied, then there's a whole another process you have to go through, to like I guess fight that no that he said. And so yeah, luckily I got the bypass, and the next step was just to get an abortion, and it was just like, wow, like finally I got the bypass. Now I can actually get the abortion. And I remember when I did get the abortion, like the same day or the next day, I was already like on my way to San Antonio to start, orientation and start school. So yeah, the whole thing was like really stressful, especially because I had to figure out transportation. I had to figure out how to like be secretive and like hide it from my mom. And luckily I wasn't in school at the time, because then it would made it a million times harder. But yeah, and then also like the last step, I guess, into getting the abortion was to pay the abortion. And I like had like completely forgot about how much it would cost, or I had no idea how much it would cost, because I was just so focused on, getting through each step and making sure that I did well with the judge. And so the abortion was like $600, which is like the average amount for an abortion, or like when you're in the first 6 to 12 weeks, I guess. And the price was around $600, and I was just scared, because I was like, yeah, I don't have $600. I don't think it's possible to get $600 within like the next, 24 hours. And so I was just really scared. And then luckily, James DeProstas helped me connect with some funds, like Lilith Fund. And so I got in contact with them. But like, unfortunately, I only had like $100, $200 like shaved off my bill. So there was still like outstanding bill of like $400. And then luckily, my partner's family ended up paying for the abortion. And I knew that it wasn't like something easy, because $400 is just like, it's not like something that like laying around. And so I knew that was very, I was just really grateful, because that's very generous. And I knew that must have like, set some things back. But I was just really grateful, because if I didn't get that money, I would have had to like postpone it, and it would have been more difficult, because I was already going to San Antonio and everything. So yeah, definitely the whole experience was just stressful, but I'm just grateful that I got it.
I'm so glad you shared your story, and thinking about like having to deal with the judicial bypass, like that is so much for a young person to have to navigate.
Yeah, I remember I remember like not having time to like really validate my feelings, like really processing what I was going through. Like I was being, like very secretive. I had to, kind of just be to myself and, with my partner. But this is this very serious situation that I was trying to, get through, as a minor that had never been through anything like close to this. And then, on top of that, finding transportation, finding like the funds, and that was just like so stressful. But I really didn't have time to like evaluate like logically, like, oh, what about me? Like I didn't have to, like I couldn't think about, the money. I couldn't think about the transportation. Like these things just had to happen. And then like my feelings just kind of had to like get thrown out the window, because I just couldn't concentrate on that. I couldn't like feel scared. I had to just, push through it. And so it was just like very scary. And I reflect a lot back on it, and it was just like insane how like determined I was. But it was definitely like, I look back at it to this day, and it was like the most mature decision I ever made, because I like looked clearly at my future, and I saw that what I wanted, and I knew that getting an abortion, I had to get there.
Yeah, it just feels like it adds so much undue stress on you, right? Like that you had to go through a judicial bypass versus being able to just go get the abortion care you needed.
Yeah, because I mean, even now with the regular way it takes to get an abortion, there's still like this, the mandatory waiting period, and you have to wait for the times that they have available. And especially, only having one clinic down in the RGB where I'm from, it's difficult. And luckily, I lived in the same city as that clinic. But yeah, it couldn't just be like a normal, like, okay, go to the abortion, figure out the funds. It was just like a lot harder on top of that, because I had to go through this very lengthy, 2-week process.
Well, Veronika, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. I hope you enjoyed these 2 episodes with Abortion Storytellers. I had so much fun talking to them. It was just so powerful to hear their stories in their own voices. And I am going to make sure that we do this more often. I know we do the annual episode in the fall where I talk to people telling their story of how they got started working in this field. I think that this is going to be our spring annual episode to do abortion storytelling. It's really important, and I want to make sure that those stories continue to be represented on our podcast. So I hope you enjoyed them. As always, let me know. Feel free to reach out if you have questions or if you have a topic you'd like us to cover. Please feel free to shoot me an email at jenny@reprosfightback.com. And that's Jenny with an IE. Or you can reach out to us on Facebook and Twitter at rePROs Fight Back or on Instagram at rePROsFB. Otherwise, I will see y'all in 2 weeks. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit us at our website at rePROsFightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at rePROs Fight Back and on Instagram at rePROsFB. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends, and please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening.